And then you, sir.
Last but not least, okay. Sorry, everybody. My name is Paul Jackson. Officially, I have a doctorate in computer engineering that I got in 1998 from Texas A&M. But in 1993, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. So I'm living now here in Tacoma with my wife, Jasmine Brown, who's an artist, and we have a nonprofit called Swan Creek Art Academy, and it's about digital art and music. And so we're not teaching it; it's more about demonstration, exposure to children. So we have a bunch of iPads, we have a bunch of like synthesizers and drum machines, and this stringless keyboard. I mean, a stringless guitar that you can use. What I do, I'm a videographer. I love being a fly on the wall. So I go around and with my phone and my gimbal and I record stuff. So I was at the Urban League reception last month, and then my wife has got picked to do a sculpture about domestic violence in Portland. So I have that up there. I've got other conversations I've done. I was at the Bobby and shot that. And so, yeah, just ask. Thanks.
And what would you like to get out of the presentation?
Oh, just, figure out what we can get the grant for the nonprofit that my wife has. So I know she has some grants from the city. We're trying to get this building, as you know, what's it called? The Rain Building that's at 21st and Jefferson. And so you're dealing with the D from iUrban Teen, and we're trying to buy the building because we're going to have another group of other Black-led, non- and for-profit companies to come in that space and use it. So we left it up to you guys to do the purchase, and we were discussing and going back and forth. So I'm kind of in the dark on that right now. So, and I like to ramble, so I should stop and pass it on.
Thank you. I guess it's my turn then. Hello, everybody. My name is DeiMarlon Scisney. But please feel free to call me D. I'll stand up. Because I don't want to talk at y'all, though. This is going to be interactive. And I want to make sure, do people have note paper? Lots of notes is going to need to be taken. So looks like there's a notebook underneath here and some paper and stuff. So I don't know if people need paper. But so my name is DeiMarlon Scisney. Please feel free to call me D or the Data Guy. That's trademarked. And so my background is data and ML engineering. I spent about 6.5, 7 years in Amazon Web Services. I like to say I went from corporate to community. While I was in corporate America, I dealt with startups, Series A to E, helping them implement their modern data strategy. So everything from how are you bringing your data in, how are you storing your data, how are you processing it, and how are you visualizing it. I'll repeat that. How are you bringing your data in? How are you storing your data? How are you processing? And how are you visualizing? Those same 4 steps can be applied to whether or not you're spending $100 a month on the cloud or $0 a month on the cloud. So I was dealing with clients that were spending $250,000 a month on cloud services in strategic ISV. So I then graduated to work with clients like DocuSign, Lacework, HashiCorp, Tanium, software companies. You all have probably used DocuSign, helping them implement their modern data warehousing solution. So as I said, I loved corporate, was able to launch a multi-million-dollar program with them. I worked with Tiffany Johnson with the Black Business Accelerator, Denise Quasi with the Underrepresented Partner Initiative, the Underrepresented Founder Initiative, and then I created the Underrepresented Partner Initiative and launched that. Loved my time in corporate, but then I looked back and I was like, hey, I'm making Amazon $127 million a year, and I'm barely making anything. And so with that, I left corporate with the same mentality of how can I take my skills, right, in social data science. While I was there, I got my master's in social data science. So really looking at data of community and how can we take that and now overlay that with technology and benefit, right, society. So we look at things like environmental impact. We look at things like affordable housing, economic impact, workforce. I heard you starting a youth mentor program, right? What does that look like in data collection? What does that look like in actually measuring the impact behind a program like that so then you can get more funding? Because now with DEI being a cuss word in many instances with the federal government, we are at a time where you have to tell your story through the data, right? And so I'll be going over that today and really working with small businesses and nonprofits is my bread and butter, what I do, working with them to help them tell their story through data, but I also do a lot of work with state and local entities and impact tracking and impact analysis. So for example, the Department of Commerce, OED, Department of Health, and really tracking the programs and funding that's going into community to ensure that it's going to the right places.
I'm sorry, D, I'm recording this to Facebook. I mean, to YouTube. It's going to be private, but is it okay to stream?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah. Anybody else that'd like to record can also do that as well. So with that, today I'm going to be talking about two things. Yes.
Wait, go back, you said something, how do you, there were three things you said.
The four things?
Yes.
Yeah.
Four things.
Can you tell them?
Oh, yes, but I didn't write it down. How to store it.
Okay, that's second.
How to
So what's the first thing?
data in.
Okay, ingestion, bringing the data in,
Alright.
right? How are you, then what?
Processing?
That's
Stored.
third.
That's third.
Storing it,
Storing.
right? You gotta have a central repository, you gotta have a place where the data's going.
I didn't get the four.
And then after that, you're processing that information and then visualizing it. So how do you tell your story through impact dashboards, right? And a lot of companies, a lot of nonprofits are sitting on data. They're sitting on Excel spreadsheets. A lot of that is KPI driven, right? So I reached X amount of attendees or X amount of people participated in my program. But how do we go beyond that and now track impact? So X% of people of that program are now have jobs in X industry, right? So that is the impact of that program going beyond KPIs. But first, before we can get there, we have to set up the data pipelines, right, or the strategy to be able to collect that information. Does that make sense? KPIs are key performance indicators, right? And KPIs are also adjacent to your outcomes. So oftentimes there's outcomes and deliverables that these grants and RFPs or whatever you're going for are looking for, right? And a lot of times these companies are just focused on, hey, how do we get the outcomes of these grants? But now, again, with DEI, they're not giving money out the way that they were. So how do we go beyond just tracking outcomes to now tracking impact? And hey, this is exactly where your dollars are going.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So today I want to talk about AI and data, right? And so I'll get into the AI portion a little bit later because before we can get into AI, we really have to understand the data, right? And so I want to just kind of open it up to people. Who knows what AI is? Can somebody tell me? What is AI?
Artificial intelligence.
Okay. You had your hand raised? Yes, okay. Anything else?
Using a computer as a brain.
Okay, that's
Do work,
good.
yeah.
So I heard brain, then a computer, okay, anything else?
It's a fantastic resource.
Okay, a
Time
resource, time saver, okay, all right. I'll write these down. Resource, time saver, all of these things, computer, brain. So I want you all to understand that before we can get to when I pick up my phone and say, hey Siri. Hey Siri. And Siri responds, right?
After a
Siri
while.
is artificial intelligence, right? That is AI. That is getting the machine, the robot, the drone, whatever that is, to think like a human. That's the broadest thing, but I want you all to understand, you think of it as a big circle, right? AI, right? That is Siri, that's Alexa, that's all of those things, right? Getting the machine to think like a human. But in order for the machine to think like a human, as Meek Mill says, there's levels to this, right? So one level down, right, or in, I would like to say, is machine learning, right? So before the machine can understand, reason, right? When I say, hey Siri, it responds and actually, understands what I'm saying. It needs to be trained on data, right? And that's where the machine is learning. I won't get into all of the technical nuances of what that looks like, but I will draw this out here. I'll just kind of show on this.
So basically, it needs all the information first to give us any information.
Right. So here I have three circles. There's the bigger circle, AI, getting the machine to think like a human, right? But before we can have that, there needs to be machine learning that's involved. The machine has to learn. Now there's two different types of machine learning. We won't get into the technical side. It's supervised and unsupervised, but it sounds just the way that it sounds, right? I'm supervising the machine because I'm giving it the data set, I'm telling it exactly what this data is, and then it's learning from it. Or I'm unsupervising it, right? I'm giving it a data set, and then it's left to the machine to reason through that on its own, right? So before we can have Siri, right, we have to train Siri on data. And so that's getting the machine to think like a human. So the machine is learning. But in order for it to reason, right, that's deep learning. So that goes one step even further down, right? So that is actually reasoning. So when I say, hey Siri, right, it's reasoning that when I say that speech, right, that I then need to respond there. And so artificial intelligence, again, in layman's terms, is getting the machine to think like a human. But before it can think like a human, it has to be trained on the data through machine learning, and then it has to reason through that through deep learning. Does that make sense? All right, awesome. Now, who can tell me what AI is?
Get the machine to think like you.
Thank you. All right. So that is AI. So we'll get into that, but before we can have AI, we need to understand the data, right? And so I always say garbage in, garbage out. So these models that are coming out now, and I'm not expecting you all to be AI engineers, we are consumers of AI, right? Much like software as a service, SaaS, we use DocuSign, we log into systems and we're using that software. We're now entering into this age where gone is, AI engineering, it's AI as a service, right? Where we are directly using and consuming these ChatGPT, Midjourney, all of those are softwares, right? So it's AI as a service, right? And so I want you all to think of it as what I'm thinking of is from an engineering perspective, but I want you all to understand that you all also need your data in order, much like the data needs to be in order to go into these models as well. Does that make sense? All right, so when we talk about data, again, there's 4 stages to it. How you're bringing your data in, how you're storing your data, how you're processing, and how you're visualizing that. I wanna open it up. What systems are you all currently using? Anybody in Google Workspace, Microsoft Workspace, CRM tools, productivity tools? Like, what are you all using for tools right
But
now?
I don't know how to use it.
Okay,
I have Google Suite, but I'm not using it to capacity.
okay, Google Suite,
Beyond email and calendar. And
Okay.
I don't even really know how to do that well.
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
okay, Google Suite. Anybody
Are you
else?
asking like Microsoft 365?
Yeah.
So Microsoft 365.
Yes.
Okay,
I
because
have
some
Google.
people are in Microsoft, some people are in Google.
Well, then, yeah, the nonprofit is Google Suite, wherever, and I'm with Angel. AI, I use Bing
Okay,
for
awesome,
the chat.
For my AI, I use FYI.
okay, all right, all right.
It's sad, I don't even know what to say.
I've used Excel and ChatGPT,
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. And what are you using Excel for?
inventory. And,
Okay.
Yeah, just keep track of my books. pretty much.
Okay, okay. Inventory, books. Ooh,
You
we
talking
gotta get some time.
Yeah.
like you're talking about, like, are you talking about things like you keep track of your books?
Right. So
I
even
have-
those types of tools as well, those are all softwares.
Oh, okay, good.
So QuickBooks.
I use Zero.
Zero.
And I just learned that Zero started putting an AI function on theirs,
Okay.
Jax.
Okay,
That was interesting.
awesome.
But that's it. Helps, I guess, with data, but Zero, which is XER.
Well, we're looking into QuickBooks now, because I gotta
Okay.
do something, 'cause my system ain't working. My personal system.
Yeah, typically for small businesses, I hear QuickBooks and nonprofit spaces, but then also Gusto is
Oh, I use that stuff.
very
It
affordable.
interchanges.
Mhm, and it integrates everything.
I use
So,
HubDoc.
I'm sorry,
HubDoc.
HubDoc, okay,
For the
okay,
receipts.
okay.
DeiMarlon, I can already tell we don't need a round 2.
Okay, so, I'm hearing Google Workspace, I'm hearing Microsoft Workspace, I'm hearing some AI tools, Excel, which a lot of organizations are running on. I went into one organization that's a multi-million-dollar nonprofit, and they were doing their entire payroll system in Excel spreadsheet. All submitting, I mean, everything was in Excel spreadsheet. So it is possible to move beyond that, but what are the tools to do that, right? And so when we talk about ingestion, I want to start there. How are we bringing the data in? So I heard mentor program, I heard inventory management, I heard nonprofit organization, different consulting opportunities and things like that, or consultants. So I'm curious, what are you all currently using right now to bring data in? And when I mean that, surveys, right? Any type of information tracking that you all are currently doing now?
And Google Forms.
Okay, Google Forms.
Yeah.
And that's perfect for your Google Workspace. A lot of people don't understand that everything is right there, much like Microsoft, right? So when you're on Google Workspace, of course, there is a fee, right, that's associated with, using this. But essentially, you have everything that you need right here. You have your productivity tools, you have your docs, you have your slides, you have your sheets, which is akin to Excel. You have your forms, right? That essentially I use this to create my AI for small business form, right? In which I'm collecting information about who that person is, right? What business they are, what industry they're in, right? Their understanding of AI, the different types of tools, all of this information, right? And this was for like a smaller session that actually we haven't even done this session. We're still collecting responses from this. But it gives you all of the, and I don't think that it shows people's names, but I'm just gonna share this, let's just go through this, okay. But then it gives you your charts and graphs right here, right, in real time. So this is very helpful for if you're doing a PowerPoint presentation or if you need to speak with funders to actually show responses and engagement, right? Community outreach, all of those things. All of that is right there in Google Forms. The same thing with Microsoft Forms as well. This is what I like to call static charts and graphs. These are not BI, Power BI, Tableau, dashboards, which is a little bit different, right? So this is essentially taking these graphs, right, and then building a dashboard around that you can use for funders. And when funders log onto your website, they can actually see the impact of your programs as well, right? So that we'll get into that. That's the visualization side at the end. But first, we need to bring the data in and be able to actually collect that information. Are there any questions on the ingestion side?
So you're saying that works like Google Suite
Yes.
or job
Yes.
forms, stuff like that?
Job forms, Typeform, SurveyMonkey, all of those. Now, I will say, in order for data siloing not to happen, now what is that? Data siloing is whenever you have siloed data, right? So you start adopting all of these tools and these platforms, and then your data becomes siloed. And that's not what you want. You want everything to be streamlined to where you can go into a workspace, you can see all your data, you can store it, right, you can store that information all in Google Drive, right? Or where is Drive?
Top. Left.
Oh, yes, thank you. In Google Drive, right? I organize all of my files there. Anytime that an email comes in as well in Gmail, you can say you want to add it to your Drive as well, right? So right there, you have everything from bringing the data in to storing that and categorizing that all in your Google Workspace.
It's $6. It's $6, not much.
I never even paid attention to, like I say, my emails into.
Are you for real?
Yeah. That's why I got
the
assistant.
best feature. So
Well, one of the challenges is that I have with collecting data on people in the sense of the children who come into our care, things like that. DCYF has its own protected Excel forms of things that they want, and then being able to transfer that into what I may need as a business is probably what I would need to figure out.
Yeah.
And then even like with different programs that we have outside of what DCYF sends us, the CAP program that Pierce County Juvenile, and they have their own form as well that we can track. So I guess it's being able to use what we're giving our clients, if you will, or I guess whoever as provider is contractee, giving them, and then being able to translate that for what we need in order to write a proposal and things like that. It can be a little challenging, and maybe it's just because I don't know the tools, which is why you're here. So, so being able to take that information and track it and can be very taxing. Or not taxing, I just don't know how to do it
Yet.
yet, exactly.
Let me download this. Okay, that's a zip file. Okay, that's not what I want. So I'm gonna show you something
Okay.
that is very helpful with
Okay.
that. So, because with Excel, right, and I'd love to understand, how your process on how you're breaking data in and storing that. But specifically with Excel, it's really cool what you can use ChatGPT for,
Okay.
right? So you can use ChatGPT to be your data analyst, to be your data engineer as well, right? So it can assume that role for you. So with that Excel spreadsheet, what I would say is you can drag and drop that right into ChatGPT, right? And then ask it, hey, take on the role of a data analyst, take on the role of a data engineer, and parse this information, because what you're needing is data parsing, right? You need to
Okay.
parse and take information from that, aggregate it, and then derive your own insights from that. And so you can ask ChatGPT, and that's PARSE, to parse that information for you and derive insights, and it will actually analyze that information that's there and pull out any relevant fields for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, does it do multiple or
It
does
does. Yeah, so I will show you exactly how to do that.
That's excellent.
Do we all agree we should have DeiMarlon back?
Yes.
Well, absolutely.
Or set up your one-on-ones.
Yeah.
Yes, we can definitely do that.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, let's just use ChatGPT to generate it for me. I need an Excel file with 1,000 rows of data. Make it in depth and leaning towards the youth, and then like youth insights. Let's just do that.
So even when you're doing that, because I'm learning now, you have to be very specific about what you want it to do for it to produce what you need, right? When you're talking to the AI.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get to that in just a
Okay.
second, because it's not what you say, it's how you say it,
Okay.
right? Which is why there's whole courses now for prompt engineering. And there's free
Prompt
courses,
engineering.
yes, prompt engineering. So you can become trained in prompt engineering to know exactly what to say in this box.
Yeah, because I did that like on 2-3 different occasions. It was the same topic, but it's like you said, it's the way you say it. And each time it was like, it was similar, but it was different. So it would give me a different layout every time.
Wow.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do is drag and drop this, right? So you can add anything here, right? So you drag and drop the spreadsheet in there, right? And then you ask it, take on the role of a data analyst / engineer. And then, you wanna know exactly what the data is here, right? So tell me what data is here, right? You want it to also, well, let's do one thing at a time. You can do multiple things, but let's do one thing at a time, right? So tell me the data that's here, and generate a report for funders, or report outline, let's say outline, for funders for me. So this is the data that it created, right? So not only did it give me youth IDs, names, cities, all of that information, right? But then it goes into this. And it tells me exactly what's here. So these are the key data sets, right? The key fields that are in there, right? And then it gives me a report outline, right? Youth voices, data-driven solutions, whatever. We can change the title, we can work on that. But then it gives me exactly the executive summary, the methodology behind the data collection, the demographic information, the youth interests, right? Social media and communication preferences, the challenges that the youth are facing, the access and equity gaps, right? So all of the data that has then been collected, it's now telling me and generating that outline. I can now use ChatGPT to then go deeper into this and actually write the report for me as well. And then, right, we can take it one step further and say, now I need graphs, charts for this. Create, or no, let's say list out, bless you, what the most important graphs for this to funders would be. So then it'll let me know, okay, so demographics, interests, social media, right? So then it categorizes based on this, hey, these are the graphs that you should give to funders, right? And then now it can actually generate it for me. So would you like for me to start generating these charts? Yes.
It's so crazy. I think about, what was the Jumping Jack Flash? Y'all remember that movie? And she was talking to it was like it was talking, and I don't know if it was real at that time. It makes me wonder how long this kind of concept has been around.
Oh, they knew about it.
Yeah.
That's why I put it in movies.
Yeah. Since the
Because I was like,
1950s.
yeah, because I was like, I remember Jumping Jack Flash, and she was like, find me, da 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 da, and then the thing came back talking to her, and I don't know if it was real, but now it makes me wonder. That was like 80s movie or something like that, right?
AI has been around since the 1950s. It originally was the ELIZA project, so ELIZA. And I mean, literally been around since 1956.
So have they just been building and evolving this all the time to where it comes to now the direct,
Well, what it
consumer
was
or just
is the data, right? We didn't have the data. So 90% of the data that we have that are able to be like insights derived from was accumulated over the last 2 years, well, 3 years, right? And so within that, it's like we have entered into this phase of time where it's been nothing but constant data collection for these years with Google, with Amazon, with all of these companies. They were tracking us, but we thought that we were surfing Google, but they were really tracking us and developing digital twins, right? Shoshana Zuboff speaks of this in The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, where she talks about how we thought we were surfing Google, but Google was really surfing us. And so again, all of this data collection, and so now we're in this age of intelligence, right? And deriving insights from that data. And so that's why you see the pickup, why AI is this household name, because we democratize this access to this platform, right? Where anybody can do it, right? I don't know why it's taking so long to create these for me, but it normally doesn't take this long.
I got a question. Did you have to format your Excel spreadsheet in a particular way before you dropped into ChatGPT? How did it know all the different, distinctions between data? So
Yeah, so it takes on that role of a data analyst. You can enter in raw data or what I like to call structured or unstructured data, right? So unstructured is data that's just living there, right? That's just, you've collected it, there's no parsing that's been done, nothing, you can just drag and drop that information in
Parsing,
there.
what do you mean, like charts and stuff like that?
Yeah, so parsing, I'm sorry, parsing is picking key points or key data out of a big data pool, right? So I want, participant information, demographics, IDs, and location, right? But you may have 50 different data points that are there, but you only want 4 of them. So that's what ChatGPT does. It can reason through all of that for you. So that's why you can add in unstructured data. You can add in structured data as well. So if it's, what I mean by structured, that's typically data that, again, you've already parsed or have the 4 and now you want to derive more insights or create graphs or whatever that is from there. So, and it does it for you. So here we go.
But how's it know? Different categories.
It knows because it's able to reason through everything. So
Okay.
it's actually taking on the role of a data analyst,
Right.
of a data engineer. So all of the same methodologies, frameworks, all of those things that's really rooted in data science, it takes that on as well,
Okay.
and then applies it directly. So it knows because it's that, right? Times 1,000, right? So I mean, it surpasses me in coding. It's amazing. It's
So
absolutely
you
amazing.
coding?
I do, yeah.
I
Yeah, I've
just
been
love how
coding.
passionate and excited you are about all. I'm sitting here going,
Oh, my God.
Oh,
you're so excited about it.
So, okay, let's say
That's
this,
why
boom,
that
for
guy.
instance, I sit down, cause I'm not the greatest at collecting data, right? I'm old school, I go slow, but I keep it in my head,